I've risen again from the sleep of slumber from streaming earlier, and I want to actually talk about our multiplayer games are actually dying when single player games are continually to strive. And I wanted to actually ask this because, apparently where I'm seeing the multiplayer games has been more lesser and lesser of getting more better advantages of like making money for the studios, and like they're more determinedly get shut down faster compared to any studios that has been actually been making games for quite some time. Because I'm seeing Marathon, a game that has actually been developed by Bungie, one of the few people who love Halo's developers. Well, used to, because Bungie has lost its identity when making games with Destiny 2. People love Destiny 2, which I don't understand how they love the game when the DLCs has been notorious with the monetization, but yet Bungie is still very favorable by a lot of people. But for some reason, they have been actually turning inside out from Bungie and turning everyone inside the community towards each own other. And now they decided to release another extraction shooter game called Marathon, and that game also got problems as well, because Marathon actually did have like some kind of licensing problems with like some of the graphic motion. Apparently, there were like some of the, I don't know, some internal issues, and the fact that that game studio has like over 800 people in it. I could be wrong, and Sony is backing it up just for the marathon game to be launched with only 88,000 players, which is not a bad number. It's not a bad number on the first day. That's really good number. But compared to another game called Slays the Spire 2, Slays the Spire 2 is an action, well, not really action roguelike. It's a roguelike card turn-based game that I have never really got myself into, but I heard so much of like the first game, Slays the Spire 1, that is actually heavily beloved by a lot of people actually. When the second one came out, that game got whopping over 500,000 players coming into the game. That is more than Marathon that could have made, okay? Because Marathon is not an indie studio, just to let you know, and especially with getting backup from Sony themselves, to not be able to actually hit 100,000 players from Marathon is crazy. Because I would also have to say, like Arc Raiders, that's another multiplayer game, extraction shooter game that is actually very commercially success. That game is actually getting a lot more attention by a lot of people. So I want to actually talk about this because do multiplayer games are actually starting to realize that players don't want to play the game competitively because there's just so much option to play competitive games, so they decide to actually because of that it just kills their own competition, so they just move on to single player games because single player games are much more linear and more independent to actually play a game, and it's less competitive so that you can actually enjoy a game itself. Like it's a game that you're supposed to actually escape from reality, so therefore if you have a single player game that you can actually put your time and immerse yourself in without being like nagged upon by people online or people from far away to talk shit on you, I can consider that as a win. I'm pretty sure, without a doubt. And I myself, I personally single player games over multiplayer games anytime. But I'm not saying multiplayer games doesn't have its own perk. I think multiplayer games has like its own connectivity with other people on the internet. Okay, it's really good. Like look at Arc Raiders. People over there don't play competitively, and most of the time, people over there are super kind and doing like all bunch of like really fun role playing in Arc Raiders. There is fun in Arc Raiders, even though despite it's a multiplayer game. Mar Rivals, really bad comparison, but there is interaction with that game that actually allows people to have fun as well. Except for rank. Do not play rank in Mar Rivals. That is abomination of hell in there. You want to actually have a mental illness? Go ahead, play rank in Mar Rivals a solo. I dare you, do that. But regardless, Helldivers 2, another multiplayer game that is actually very, very successful. I just don't understand. I would definitely say this. It's like Helldivers 2 is the most best live service game arguably of all time, without a doubt. It's the best of all time, and I still enjoy it. And there's no competitiveness whatsoever. Okay, and I would say competitiveness in a game, it should never be called as a competitive at all. I don't think that should be a thing. I don't want to actually make it as a sport. Personally, it's just not my thing. But it is cool to see other pro players play multiplayer games, knocking each other out. But however, with all of this, like people liking competitiveness and people love the multiplayer games of the interaction between other players, somehow single player games always come on top and always like really dunking all the multiplayer games down to its own fallen knees and never get a chance to get up to its own prime again. Battlefield 6 is one of the few things that really did disappoint me of like literally as a Battlefield fan. I love Battlefield games. I'm a Battlefield veteran or enthusiast. I have passion for Battlefield 6. When the game came out, first came out, that game was actually back to basic of Battlefield that we all wanted. And we all just really loving Battlefield 6, enjoying it. And then for some reason, as time goes on, the studio behind Battlefield 6 are actually getting layoffs. Why? Because people are actually losing interest in Battlefield 6 because Battlefield 6 has not getting enough, updates. It is not enough consistency of updates that makes people to keep on going engaged in the game. There, of course, Battlefield 6 still has issues without a doubt. Weapon progressions, map availability, map sizes, map destructions. There's a lot here. Like we could actually be able to have better circumstances for Battlefield 6 to get better instead of like losing players over time. And this also leads me to like talking about Resident Evil Requiem as well, because that game is a Resident Evil game, and I generally thought like there's not gonna be a lot of people playing that game, but for some reason I was wrong. Resident Evil 9 got a whopping of over 250,000 players coming into the game. People love that shit. People really do love that shit, and congratulations for Resident Evil 9 for being able to sell off 5 million copies. Okay, and at this point, it led me to believe with all these points I'm trying to say, are multiplayer games going to die off at this point? Because like I've been seeing a lot of multiplayer game studios being like handling layoffs, shutdowns. Like don't even get me started with High Guard. High Guard, that game is just jumping itself to its own lava pit. That game will never come back out. It's literally the Terminator being lousy and just falling into the lava. It's as a failed prototype. It doesn't even come out at all. There's no thumbs up whatsoever at all. It's burning and it's burning brightly. And Concord, that game was also gonna get burned brightly as well. And I do know for sure there's a lot more multiplayer game that is actually out there, like the older ones, like Counter Strike, Overwatch, Valorant. I guess people, League of Legends, people play those games because, like, I guess they're like the starters that people can't really get away from. But one of the few multiplayer games I do have to say that actually did really, I don't know how did this game even somehow become a success. That lock somehow got a lot of attraction. Apparently, that game got a lot of people playing the game or more and more over time, especially with the new patches left and right coming out. In man, but my point stands is that most of the multiplayer games, especially new ones, will actually come out with a new game, and somehow after weeks or months, they will probably go offline or shut down after that. And then, like all of a sudden, the new indie multiplayer games, no, indie single player game come out of nowhere and somehow actually beats every AAA studio games of all time. Slade Aspire 2 proves that like most indie games are just not indies at all. They really do care about audience's opinion, and if you can make a good game, people will come by and support your game. Okay, it's not about of the huge amount of budget and putting a $200 million into a game so that you can actually make an extraction shooter game just so that you can actually make yourself relevant to the trend. It's all about like respecting the audience what they want. Like if the Slade Aspire 2 was actually the better version of Slade Aspire 1, That's a big win. Hollow Knight Silksong is actually a better version of the first Hollow Knight. That's a massive win. Expedition 33, even though that's not technically indie, but it's a double A studio game. But for some reason, they were able to excel themselves and actually respected the JRPG veteran players and bring in a lot more new players to come in. It's just wonderful. I think all the studios that I mentioned here have something in common where they really focus on trying to actually respect audiences, the players' wishes of playing the game. Okay, instead of like putting tons of millions of dollars into into the investment so that you can actually see it flop in a few months. I don't know. What do you guys think of this whole entire thing? Because like I really don't know where I am actually seeing this because like multiplayer I am seeing more multiplayer games failing in their own games while single player games are getting more continuously better and better. And I do want more single player games. Like I really do want us to actually go back to the golden age of single player games like the prototype games, you know, like Killzone games. Those like the older style Call of Duty games where like they're just really going hand to hand with the politics and it's kind of fun because like they're still games, they're just games, we don't really need to actually get relevant to it too much. But regardless, what do you guys think? Like, do you think multiplayer games are actually dying? And let me know in the comment section. I'll peace out. Sayonara, suckers.